Hey guys, what's up? So in the previous video, we've learned how to adjust the speed of the camera in specific parts of the animation and also to control and save the paths. And now we are going to take a look at other attributes that we can animate here using Enscape. And to try these other resources, I'm gonna basically create a new path. So I can click here and choose the option New Video Path. And I can delete this previous path because I've already saved it. So I can basically click yes. And then I'm gonna choose a more interesting camera view. So maybe somewhere around here. I think it's quite okay now. And then I'm gonna create two new keyframes. So I can basically click here in the plus button, and then we have a first keyframe. Now I can click in this other plus button, and then we have our second and last keyframe. And if we select, for example, the first one, you can notice that under the timestamp that we've explored before, we have other resources that can be animated, such as the time of the day for creating time lapses, the focal point where we can control the depth of field effect, and also the field of view where we can create a zoom in, zoom out transition. So I'm gonna start testing the time of the day, and basically we can click here to turn this on. And once we click, you can notice that underneath our keyframe, Enscape informs us that the time of the day information now is being stored within the first keyframe. And now we can animate this feature and create a time lapse. So for example, we can choose a specific time of the day for this keyframe, and then we can choose another one for the next keyframe. And then we'll have an interesting animation simulating a time lapse. So here I will change this time of the day. Maybe I can try a morning time, for example, 6 o'clock in the morning. And we have now some interesting shadows here, so it's quite okay. Then I can click in the other keyframe. And once again, I have to activate the time of the day feature. And here now I can choose, for example, 6 o'clock in the evening. So somewhere around here, or maybe 7, and then we'll have a darker scene. I think now it's quite okay. And basically now our time lapse is already working. And if we hit the play button, we can see that the time is passing and we have a very interesting animation, basically simulating the sun's path and how the day is passing. And of course, we can change the speed of the animation. So if you consider that the time lapse is too fast or too slow, we can basically change the length. So once again, we can exit the keyframe, and here we have the total duration of our animation. And if we think that the animation is too fast, we can maybe increase the number of seconds. So for example, let's try the same animation, but now lasting 15 seconds. And I'll hit the play button to see how it goes. And of course, now we have a slower time lapse and the sun is moving in a slower way. So maybe this is the pace that you prefer. Okay, so it's not so hard to produce a time lapse animation. And if you want to save this path as a specific file, we can do the same procedure as before. We can click here and we can choose the option Save Path to File. And maybe I can save it as path number 3. So now we have 3 different paths in the same file, and they can work as takes for our full animation. Okay, so now I would like to explore other features here, and we can experiment with some camera features that can also be animated. So first of all, I can delete this path that I've just created. So I can click here and I can choose the option New Video Path. And since I have already saved it, I can actually delete it. Okay. And I will also set once again a morning time, so we can now explore our shadows tab and we can change the time and the date so that we have once again a nice sunlight simulation. So maybe somewhere around here. I think it's quite okay. And once again here, I'm going to create 2 new keyframes to try these camera resources. So I can click here. So we have our first keyframe. Then we can click here in the other keyframe. And I'm going to select the first one. And if you take a look once again here in our keyframe parameters, we still have 2 options that can be animated, the focal point and the field of view. And I will start animating the field of view. So basically this will control the visual cone of the camera as if we were changing the lenses of the camera. So we can create an interesting zoom in or zoom out effect. So basically, when we turn this option on, we can control this value here. And to start the animation, maybe I can change this value to a lower value. So now we have a zoom in effect. So maybe I can leave it around here. So we have a very close look at our Villa Savoye model. And now if I choose my second keyframe and then once again activate the field of view option but choose another value. So for example, a higher value will produce a more open angle so that we can capture more of our model and a lot of the surroundings as well. So maybe somewhere here, and we have to be careful because if we increase this value a lot, we will probably have some kind of distortion. So maybe somewhere around 100 is quite okay. And basically now, if I play my animation, we have this zoom out animation. And once again, if you are not happy with the camera speed, you can basically exit the keyframe mode and change the total duration. And also you can experiment with these other movement parameters until you get the animation that you are looking for. I'm going to leave this as it is. And once again, I'm going to save it as a specific path. So I'm going to click here and choose the option Save Path to File. And maybe I can call it now path number 4. So now we have already 4 paths that can be used as different stakes and can be combined in any kind of video editing process. Okay, so now I can create a new video path to test the last camera resource that can be animated. So I can click here and choose the option New Video Path. I can delete the former path because I have already saved it. Okay, and now here I'm going to insert any kind of object close to the camera so that we can understand better the field of view effect. So I can click here in the asset library within the Enscape window and I can explore the vehicle category. And I'm going to choose here any kind of car. So maybe this one is okay. I'm going to click here and I'm going to place this car very close to the camera, somewhere around here. I can press the Ask button and I can also rotate this car directly here in our Enscape window. I'm gonna move my camera downwards and I'm gonna rotate it a little bit. So maybe somewhere like this. And I'm gonna move it also closer to the camera. Okay, so I think that now we have a good angle and a good position for the car. Okay, and I can click here in Apply Changes. Okay, and now I'm gonna open once again my video editor. And I'm gonna create 2 keyframes as we did before. So once again, I'm gonna click here and we have a first keyframe. Then I can click here to have a second keyframe. And now I will select my first keyframe and I'm gonna activate the focal point. So as I've said before, here we can control the focal point. So we can control which areas of our image will be on focus and which areas will have this blur. And if we change here this focal point, you can see that we can't notice any change because we haven't set any kind of depth of field. So first we need to click here in the visual settings where we control the depth of field effect. And you can recall that here in the camera parameters, we have the slider of the depth of field that we can change. And when we increase the depth of field, we will have more blur. And if we decrease, we will have less blur. So I will increase here this value, and you can see that now we have already an interesting effect going on, and the Villa Savoye model is out of focus. So now if we close this window and once again change the focal point, you can notice that we can control which areas are actually on focus and which areas are not. And you can see that there is this line that helps us to choose and control better this effect. So I will try to position this focal point maybe here in the car to start with. And you can see that the Villa Savoye is completely out of focus. Okay, so I will start our animation focusing on the car, and then I can choose the second keyframe, and now we once again can activate the focal point, and now we can, for example, focus on the building. So I'm going to change here this value until this line reaches the Villa Savoye model. And now you can see that the car is completely out of focus and we have a lot of blur here close to the camera. And this will produce an interesting animation effect. So to check this out, I'm going to hit now the play button. And we can see that we have an animation that starts with the car on focus, and then this focal point changes to the Villa Savoye model, but it's going too fast. So once again, we can exit our keyframe mode and change the length of the animation because we just have 2 seconds here. So I will increase here maybe to 10 seconds. Okay, and I'm gonna check now the animation. So now we can notice the effect in a more soft way, and it's actually producing a very interesting animation, basically by changing the focal point from the car to the Villa Savoye building. Okay, so if you are happy with the result, you can once again save this path, clicking here and choosing the option Save Path to File, and maybe I can call this path number 5. So now we have 5 different paths that can be used as different takes in our Villa Savoye animation.